Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the third update 1.81 dev server and we're having a look at the Mi-4AV. This is the first in the line of Soviet helicopters that you can get your hands on if you don't purchase the Mi-24 pack, meaning that once helicopters hit OBT, this will be kind of your reserve helicopter is the best way of seeing it. Now, it's definitely different to the other machines that we have. We have three Mi-24 Hinds, and then the Mi-35, which is basically just the upgrade of these. But the Mi-4AV is something different. It's a little stubby thing, and it has some interesting weaponry on it. First of all, there is no armor protection on this vehicle at all, meaning that once you get hit, you're going to stay hit. If we look at how this thing is designed, it actually has a crew of 3. Even though it says it's a crew of 2, this is different to the majority of helicopters we've seen where they have crews of 2. So you have the gunner at the bottom, who is operating this 12.7mm flexible turret. You have the engine in the front here, the Shvetsov ASH82V, 14-cylinder radial, 1700 horsepower, so about the same amount of power as that I-225. Has the oil cooling systems, and then of course it has a pilot and what should be a co-pilot, but is labelled as a gunner. Then you have the transmission here, and of course the big fuel tank in the back. So if you want to set this thing on fire, that's where you hit. I mean, if you hit this thing anywhere, it's just going to blow up, so I suppose it doesn't matter that much. Modifications-wise, some of you may be wondering, why is this thing at 9.0? And the AH-1G, which we just had a look at right here, why is this at 8.0? Simple reason, this thing gets 80 gems. It gets 80 gems in the form of what you see here, the phalangers, which have much more abilities to be able to be up-tiered, and also give you much more flexibility when it comes to actually dealing with targets. If you look at every other, metric, the AH-1G is better than this thing, but because it gets access to 80 gems, that's a big factor on making this thing pretty useful. When we're talking about what belts to use, I personally would go for universal, just because you have that extra millimeters of penetration if you're trying to hit the ground, and also because it's good against aircraft on the 12.7. If we have a look at the modifications, you get exactly the same modifications as every other plane gets when it comes, helicopter gets when it comes to flight performance and survivability. And weaponry, well, you get bombs and you get missiles. What you actually start off with, which is kind of nice, is this ability to use these S5K rockets, and you get 96 of them, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. That's a lot of rockets to start off with, but they're also very expensive. 2,400 silver lions. And what is kind of hilarious is when you actually run these things with the phalangers, so the 4 missiles, it only costs you 100 silver lions more to run the 4 phalanger missiles on top of the S5Ks, which is why I feel like some of these costs are definitely not correct right now. What is different towards a lot of the US vehicles is this thing actually carries bombs as well, and it carries them in the place of the rockets. So you can either use bombs in this, or you can use rockets. I think it's safe to say everybody is going to use rockets. It's nice to see that they've added in bombs for that extra flair and that extra, I suppose, YouTube highlight. But the majority of the time, I'd say 99.99% of the time, you're going to want to use rockets over bombs. And anyway, let's have a look at the phalangers. So the phalangers have 650 millimeters of penetration. They also have the TNT equivalent of 4.32 kilos, and their maximum speed on trajectory is 220. So they're not very fast, but they are guided, they are missiles, they are mouse controlled, and they have a lot of penetration. This is why this machine is at 9.0 instead of 8.0 like the American machine. So you have your choices. You can either take them with the rockets, you can take them with the bombs, or you can take them with the other bombs. Now, I would personally just tell you, just take them with the rockets, save yourself some hassle. But for the purpose of testing, I'm going to take the bombs, because I haven't actually shown you any bombs on helicopters and how they work. Like, is there a different bombing site and all of that stuff? So, just for this, just understand if I'm actually being serious with what I'm using for this machine. I'm using this all day, every day. The 4 Phalangers and the 96 S5K rockets with the 150 millimeters of penetration, with not a lot of explosive mass, showing that they are AP rockets instead of HE ones. So let's actually get into the battle. First things first though, no camouflages, unfortunately. Doesn't get any teeth or anything like that, which is a shame. Hopefully in the future what we'll see is more camouflages for these helicopters. There are some weird and wonderful camouflages out there. A lot of my, let's call them Japanese supporters, have pointed out some of the more interesting camouflages coming from the the Japanese side of things. So maybe one day we'll get some weeaboo camouflages. Anyway, as you can see, the top opens where the cockpit is, the side door opens, and the booty also opens. Completely crazy. A lot of moving parts on this thing, which is wonderful. And here are the updated Soviet models, as you can see. The absolute units. There are the doors opening and closing, and as you can see we have a little bit of a gun going forward. Let's first of all take off. You can see it has 4 wheels on it. Come on baby, you can do it. There we go. Now unfortunately the gears don't go in on this thing, which is completely fine. And let's just go over to the targets. The oil is killing itself on this machine, which kind of worries me. Hopefully that'll sort itself out. But as you can see, there is no bombing view for the bombs. So that is not something that you will get. So let's just see. We're using the ATGMs right now on an ME, or the M163 Vulcan. Going forward, this is at 3,000 kilometers. It is incredibly easy to use. So let's point ourselves forwards. I'm kind of worried about that oil, but once we actually get some speed behind us, that should actually go down. Now what is interesting is if you're at specific angles like this one, because of the way that the camera is mounted on the bottom, this is something I haven't really mentioned, but if you are at an extreme angle moving forward, then of course you won't be able to fire the missiles forward. You have to make sure that the camera lines up with what you are shooting at. So remember, this is 650 millimeters of penetration, so this won't always be good enough to be able to go through top tier tanks. You can see you can still do it, even if you just want to do it by guiding it in without the sight. You can easily do that. But yeah, 650 if you hit it at the wrong angle, especially when you look at the new machines such as the M1IP, you're going to be bouncing off the turret. There's no two ways about it, so you're going to have to watch out for that. Oop, we're out of 80 gems. Right, let's go in for a bombing run then. Let's see how this goes. So we're gaining speed, going down. That's a steep angle. I know I'm trying to bomb like an aircraft, but like a plane, I should say. Oh wait, what do I have my bomb set to? God damn. Sorry, I forgot that it would be a different button. Let's see. Oh, 3. Okay, there we go. Of course, for aircraft, helicopters, and planes, you all have different controls for each, so you're going to have to get used to switching between them. Obviously, on this one right now, we don't have anything in the bottom of the screen indicating what you may be able to use in order to, you know, drop your stuff. And I feel like it's going to stay like that. Because obviously with aircraft it never was like that, it's only like that with tanks. Bombs away. Okay, so it drops 2 at once in realistic, and I think I just bombed myself. But I'm okay. Bombs 250. Of course they're going to do a little bit of damage. It's definitely not going to be the way to go though. The way to go is obviously going to be rockets, because you can hit them from, you know, 1.5 kilometers away. Maybe if you get it above the battlefield by a lot and are able to drop them from very high, then you go for it. But why not instead just use ATGMs at that point? It just seems a much more worthwhile thing. And as I said before, when I looked at the AH-1Z, these ATGMs against high-tier vehicles they're not one-shot machines. There's something that you're going to have to hit 1 or 2 times, and I feel like they've been designed for that reason. Obviously, you don't want a scenario where a helicopter from 5 kilometers away is just able to annihilate you without really having to think about it, when there's, you know, no air or anything else like that going on. The turn on this is definitely not as good as other helicopters. It definitely suffers in that regard. When I look at the maneuverability of... whoa dear. Whoa dear. Recover, wonderful. When I look at the maneuverability of the AHs, like the Cobras, and then I look at the maneuverability of this thing, I definitely see this being a lot less than the other ones. So that is obviously a bit of a slight against it. Let's just hit this truck here. The 12.7 obviously doesn't do as much damage as a 30 or a 23, but you wouldn't want it to. And it bombs away. Let's see if those hit. Beautiful. So you can see the bombs still doing a lot of damage. Overall, this is definitely a nice machine because it's different to the rest of the Soviet helicopters. One of the problems that I personally have with a lot of the Soviet stuff is it all seems incredibly samey to me. So for me, it's just nice to see something that is different to the Hind. I understand a lot of people like the fact that, you know, there's a lot of the same vehicles, the iconic vehicles, but I want stuff which is different and feels different, and this definitely does. It definitely feels worse than the other Soviet helicopters that I've seen. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.